Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Alongside Podcast, which is a production of Heritage Baptist Church. The purpose of this podcast is to come alongside followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church. I'm your host, Mike Crump, and on today's podcast, I'm very excited to welcome Ashley Hamilton to the microphone. Ashley is the executive assistant to Pastor Kent. She's a creative powerhouse here at Heritage, and whether Ashley is helping lead worship on Sundays, dancing with the kids at VBS, or sitting through a 4-hour meeting, it's evident that she is passionate about Jesus and his church. And Ashley, we're excited to have you on the podcast.
Wow, thanks. That's quite the introduction.
Well, got to get a little creative in there, but it's all true. It's all true stuff. So very excited to have you on. It's been a joy to hear the stories of our pastors, of our staff, just to hear how God has worked in the hearts and the lives of those here at Heritage. So let's start with you. Just a little backstory. Where did you grow up and what's your church background?
Yeah. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, a city called Altoona. It's kind of central PA. I was actually born in New Jersey and then lived in Pennsylvania until I was 15, and then we moved back to New Jersey. So feel like I can't quite claim one state over the other, but formative years were definitely in Pennsylvania, which was really great.
Yeah.
I grew up with a whole family really, who loves the Lord. My parents are believers. Their parents are believers. So we have a great foundation of faith in our family. My dad, while we lived in Pennsylvania, served as a lay leader for our church's youth ministry.
Okay.
So I really did grow up in the church. Even from the time I was little, I was being toted around with them to all their youth events and things like that. I grew up really involved with our church's Awana program. I really loved Awana and just love how much of my knowledge of the Bible, even today, I can trace back to that. It's so valuable.
That's awesome.
And then was super involved in our youth group. And my mom is a singer and has been really musical. So I grew up singing with her in the church and just being involved with music as well, kind of my whole life. So yeah, that was kind of my upbringing. I got saved when I was 5. So one of those youngsters who just had the privilege of hearing about Christ from a very early age. And I'm really thankful for that.
Was there something in that moment as a 5-year-old that kind of led you to that
yes,
decision?
It's a great story. So I was at Vacation Bible School one summer, and my grandma picked me up, and she kind of tended to take care of me like in those after school hours because both of my parents worked. And so she picked me up, and we went and were waiting for my mom to get off work. And in Vacation Bible School that day, I had won a goldfish.
Oh, wow.
A real live goldfish, one of the ones you get in a clear plastic bag. Yep. And I was just thrilled. I was so excited. I was just holding this goldfish and telling my grandma about it. And of course, a naturally curious 5-year-old, I asked my grandma, like, what would happen if my fish died? Or, what happens when my fish dies? And she kind of dodged it. She's like, well, I don't really know what's going to happen to your fish, but do you know what would happen if you died?
Oh, wow.
Yes, way to go, Grandma. She really bridged that really well. And I had never had that conversation before. And obviously I knew about Jesus, and I knew about what he had done on the cross, but she really connected those dots and what that meant for me. And said that I had the opportunity to ask Jesus to be Lord of my life. And so she kind of led me through that process, and I prayed and just gave my heart to Christ that day, all because of a little goldfish.
That is really cool. And I think next time we have a VBS, maybe we have some fish in a bag.
Yes. It's a great tool.
A great tool. I love it. So Ashley, little 5-year-old Ashley, confesses Christ and begins obviously a journey towards the Lord and deeper fellowship with him. What's it look like as you grow up, and what's it look like inside the church growing up a little bit and learning more about Jesus?
Yeah, I'm so thankful. I really, as a child, I really did have such a heart for the Lord. I was really just passionate about learning about him, reading his word. I still have my Bibles from when I was a kid and a teenager, just full of notes and stuff. And I just look back, I'm like, man, God, you're so good to like draw me to yourself so soon in my life. It was really just very good formative experiences in my church. The church that I grew up in was really traditional, hymns with the piano and the organ. And so kind of the culture of Christianity that I know now is really different than what I grew up in, but I'm still so thankful for the church environment I grew up in, because they were very faithful to biblical teaching and sound doctrine and all of that, even though it was a different kind of feel. But when I was 12 years old, actually, that was kind of a turning point in my life. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12. And that was really influential in my spiritual journey, just because I knew even at that point in my life that God was going to teach me something through this.
Really?
So it was really difficult, a very, very difficult transition just in my physical life. But at the heart of it, just right away, I actually remember a youth group meeting that I was at. It was like the week after I'd been diagnosed. It was my first time back to youth group. And we were doing prayer requests and stuff at the end. And I just remember saying in front of everybody, like, I know that this thing is going to be really hard to live with, but I know that God has a purpose in it. And I know that he's trying to teach me something. And that memory has stuck with me, and I've had to call on that memory many, many times through the years when that journey with diabetes is really difficult, to just remember that God still has purpose through it. Wow. So,
what a blessing to hear how even at a young age, the Lord really just demonstrating his faithfulness to strengthen you during that time. I know that even those who may be listening, maybe even some younger kids who maybe you're facing something similar and you find yourself having to deal with something that you didn't foresee before, and knowing that the Lord has been and is faithful to see you through that. Yeah. So you're coming to grips with your faith. You're really growing in the Lord. You're facing adversity with diabetes and moving forward. From there, are you still in Pennsylvania at this time?
Yeah, for a couple more years. We moved when I was 15.
Okay.
And so that, again, was a really big time of transition, and another really great way that God showed his faithfulness to me and my family. We moved because my dad was offered a full-time pastoral position at a church in New Jersey to be their youth pastor, which was a big change for him because he had only been a lay leader previously. And so my parents went through this process of really kind of laying out the fleece for God. Like they said, God, we are not going to consider this. We're not going to move unless you answer some very specific things. And so the night that they told me that we were going to be moving, it was very emotional, obviously, but I so clearly remember, like, they laid out point by point. They said, we told God, like, unless you answer this question about our house, and unless you put us in this specific location, and unless we know that, like, your dad's new medical insurance will pay for your diabetes supplies, like very specific things, then we're not going to go. And they laid out for me one by one the dates and the times that God answered those requests. Wow. And so even though it was such a sad thing to recognize, like, oh, I'm going to be leaving all my friends behind, I had full trust that we were doing what God wanted us to do. Yeah. And so that was a really cool thing. So we moved to New Jersey, and I started high school. We moved in August of 2002, and I started high school that month in New Jersey without really any friends, which was not a pleasant experience. New Jersey is a special place, and the people from New Jersey are special kinds of people. And it was hard. It was hard as a teenager to break in to, with peers that I didn't know. But God was good, and I did make friends, and our new church was amazing, and they were so welcoming. But that was probably one of the more difficult times in my life spiritually, because I think just through the desires of the world, whether it be my desire for friendship, for people to know me and like me, I just was willing to do things that weren't pleasing to the Lord, in order to just fit in and get along and whatnot. So I went through a couple years in high school and early college of really just living that double life of showing up at church on Sunday and singing and helping with the kids and just being the good pastor's daughter. And then throughout the week at school, just engaging in relationships and talk and activities that did not align with, being a daughter of Christ. So,
Well, as you're transitioning there, I'm curious, did you feel moving from a, daughter of lay leader to the pastor's kid? How was that transition personally? Did you feel, was there a difference? Because we kind of tease about pastors' kids and that kind of thing. And since I have some pastors' kids, my own, but I was just curious if you felt that transition.
Yes, I think I did for sure. I think my brother would say that as well. And I think that he and I both picked up on that difference in some different ways in our lives, but I can remember being really taken aback within the first couple months, just kind of going from someone that some people in the church knew to being someone that everybody in the church knew, and that everybody wanted to know, and everybody wanted to know what was going on in my life, and in good ways, because they cared, not in a way that was overbearing, but it was like, oh, like, wow, like, and then of course that realization of a little bit of being in a fishbowl, like, oh, all these people care about me and my life and what I'm doing, and so they're seeing everything that I'm doing, and then of course what kind of reflection that is on my dad as the pastor, and I think that I took all that in stride, but it was for sure an adjustment. Yeah.
I don't think many people, unless you're there, a lot of times it's hard to really articulate that. Right. But that is something that I know my kids, when I transitioned into a pastoral role, that was something that kind of took them by surprise a little bit too. It's like people genuinely care, but at the same time, there's like this weird expectation, and there's so it's definitely a transition. So you go from the time of kind of wrestling, even in the faith, as you've transitioned to a new school and a new state, and things are just different. What led you to Virginia and Lynchburg?
Good old Liberty University.
I guess I could probably answer that at this
point. I think that's probably the answer most people would give if they're here in Lynchburg. But my parents both went to Liberty, and so I grew up my whole life just hearing about how much they loved Liberty and what a great place it was. And so I was actually dead set on coming to Liberty from like 8th grade. Gotcha. Like I didn't apply to other colleges. Like I knew that's where I wanted to go. Yeah. So, I came down to Lynchburg, and I was at Liberty from 2006 to 2010. Okay.
What was your focus?
I studied education, specifically teaching English as a second language. Oh, wow. And got my K through 12 certification. So those were really great years.
Awesome. Was your intention to obviously be a teacher?
Yeah, I don't know why I still tend to feel a little insecure in acknowledging this, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I came to college. Like truly, it tore me up inside, like just trying to think like, God, what do you want me to do? And just feeling like there's any number of paths I could go down. I didn't feel like I had one specific calling. And so at the time, I knew I kind of wanted to do something in teaching, and ESL was like really picking up at the time, because just around the country, nationally, they had put laws in place that if a school system has kids that needed English, they had to provide an ESL teacher. And so schools were hiring like crazy. It was a big hot commodity. And so I was like, oh, great, I'll do this. And then by the time I graduated, we had just come through the big financial crisis, 2009. And so schools across the country were slashing their budgets and saying, well, we're just going to have the bare minimum. Like, we're just going to do what we can to get by. And so then no one was hiring. So I did a couple interviews, but nothing really panned out. And then I got an opportunity with a job at Liberty in 2011 and took that. And yeah.
Very nice. So, where does Hunter come in?
Hunter, my wonderful husband, he and I met at Liberty, but not as students. We actually met as employees.
Okay.
We both worked in the registrar's office at Liberty, and we met in, I think, 2012. Started dating in the next year. We got married in 2015. But we met as coworkers on the same team. We sat back to back in a row of cubicles. And so our friendship grew as we both had a habit of eavesdropping on our friends' conversations around us. And then we would be, chatting each other and just making jokes about the stuff we were overhearing. And we found a shared love of, all of nerddom, from Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars,
We've had our share of conversations, Marvel-wise and everything. Yeah.
So our friendship grew really fast. We became fast friends and really close. And we got married in 2015 and just celebrated our 6th anniversary on the 15th.
That's awesome. So, well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's very exciting. Very exciting. So you have you went from working at Liberty and now transitioned, and now you're here at Heritage.
Yes. What
brought you here to Heritage?
Well, for about a year before I left Liberty, I really felt like the Lord was stirring in my heart the desire and the need to move on from Liberty. There were so many good things from my time there, but I was looking for more, just professionally, and really my whole life I have cared so much more about ministry than I have like what I do for my job. Gotcha. I remember telling my parents, like, when I was just starting college, I'm like, I don't really care what I do. Like, even if I work at Walmart or something, like, as long as I'm involved in ministry, that's really where my heart is.
Yeah.
So when I saw that this job was posted at Heritage for an executive assistant, I'm reading the job description, and it honestly felt too good to be true, because it was the merging of both of my passions. Like, through my professional career, I really finally identified that I really enjoy being a high-level assistant and all the work that comes with that. Yeah. And so it was doing that at my church. And I just thought, like, awesome. There's no greater combination of things. So, so I applied and ended up getting hired, which I just was so pleased about. Yeah. And that was December, almost 2 years ago. So
excellent. Well, you've been a joy to have on staff, and just like I mentioned earlier, really a creative powerhouse. And the fact that you keep Kent, focused, that's
it is a job. They got to pay somebody for that.
That's right. Now you're obviously passionate when it comes to and with those giftings to be able to be that administrative assistant, that really executive level. It boggles my mind what y'all do, because I am not wired that way. But you also are very passionate about worship, and you've been involved in our worship team, helping lead worship on Sunday mornings as well as in other areas. How did you mentioned a little bit about singing in church. When did you really just kind of gain that desire and that heart for music?
Heart for music started, from the first time I have memories. I grew up in my house singing with my mom. She's the one who, first taught me how to harmonize. And Grew up listening to her sing in the church. And I think it was really, when we moved to New Jersey, the church that we joined there was much more modern, and they really introduced us to like contemporary music in the church. And that was just like a light bulb for me. Like, it really was something that my heart just grabbed onto, because I don't know, it's just something for me with music, being able to express what's in my heart to God through that vehicle is there's just nothing like it, really. So I first started helping to lead worship in that church, and it kind of went by the wayside, because when I came to Lynchburg, in my time at Liberty, they did campus church, and so I didn't have the opportunity to go to another church and get involved there. And honestly, it was kind of like a small fish in a big pond was kind of the scenario when I came down here. And so I realized, like, I might not do this again. I don't know where I'm going to end up, whatever. But eventually, in coming here to Heritage, I was able to get plugged in with the worship team. And it just rekindled and reignited that love that I have for leading the church in that way.
Awesome. Do you have favorite worship music?
Oh man.
Like, who right now is on your, I would say, spinning in your CD player?
I would say Shane and Shane and the Worship Initiative, which is, kind of an organization that Shane and Shane started. And they mostly do like covers of worship songs that are already out there, but I really just appreciate their heart behind the music that they put out. To me, it seems very humble and really not showy, which I think you can run into a lot of that with some modern worship stuff. So they're definitely a favorite.
Awesome. So you've also been involved here at the church with Celebrate Recovery.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, for those who maybe aren't familiar with Celebrate Recovery, maybe share a little bit about what it is, and then how you, because you and Hunter were involved, weren't you?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Man, where would we be if not for CR? So Celebrate Recovery is basically like a 12-step program that you might be familiar with for alcoholics or other substance abuse issues. It takes kind of those same 12 steps that you might find in another program like that, but it grounds them in Scripture and the truths of God's Word, and places Jesus as the higher power, whereas in those other programs, it's just an ambiguous higher power, but Celebrate Recovery is very focused on Christ and the Bible. And it is a program that is for anybody who struggles with any sort of past hurt in your life, relational baggage, emotional baggage, any sort of habits that you feel like, as a believer, I shouldn't continue to struggle with this type of thing, whatever it is, and wanting to break free of that. It's meant to be a safe space for anybody to just come and be real about their stuff and find community as you are, pursuing healing and wholeness through Christ. You're doing it in a community with other people who are also being transparent in their struggles.
That's awesome. I love just hearing the heart behind CR, talking with Dean, talking with you guys, just hearing it is a safe space. And I think that's something that's a lot of times people are very concerned about. Hey, where can I go when I'm overwhelmed with life's hurts, hang-ups, the things that habits that have been formed over the years? All Christians wrestle at times and need that community. And so it's a great place to go. For those who are interested, you can go online. We'll have links on the show notes for that. So now that you are an executive assistant, you're helping Kent out, you're helping the team, and a lot of so much happens in ministry behind the scenes. But there may be people going, what in the world does an executive assistant do? How would you boil down your
the
job
better
description?
question is, what does an executive assistant not do? No, I kid. So I do work specifically for Pastor Kent, and so if it had to be really wrapped up in a very small nutshell, I would say that my job is to keep him on track as he's going through his day-to-day, whatever meetings he's in, whatever initiatives he's working on, if he has specific decisions that need to be made. I just help keep him on track with his schedule, with notes and documentation of things, helping to organize all of our thoughts and ideas into something that makes sense and is makes it quick and easy for him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the very condensed version.
Yes, that's a very condensed version. Again, it is an amazing thing to for the work you do and the other executive assistants. There is a lot that happens, a lot of decisions that are made, a lot of just details that are refined over time. And it's really awesome how you and the team kind of help coordinate all of that and keep it from just exploding all over the place.
Well, we try.
So with all that said, how can people be praying for you specifically and what you're doing here at Heritage?
That's a good question. I think I would love for people to pray, and this is not just for me, but I think more so for our team of, Kent and the others that we work with to just keep on pursuing the Lord and what His direction is for the church, because, I know Kent's heart is to only be making decisions for our church body and leading our church in ways that that Christ wants us to go and most glorifying to Him. And yet in the midst of day-to-day things, it can be super easy to just get bogged down in other things that can detract from that. So just praying that I can help to be a source of encouragement in that direction. And that my thoughts and my heart and my attitude as I come to work every day is contributing towards things that are glorifying to Christ. And then I think, too, just continuing to pray for the ministry of Celebrate Recovery here at the church. There's so many people who have come through the program and have been influenced by that, and I know that there's more to come. So just praying for the good work that's being done there.
Amen. Awesome. Well, for those who are listening, I would encourage you, pray for Ashley, pray for Hunter as well, for their family, just pray for wisdom and that discernment on how best to help and encourage the church at large. All right, Ashley, it is time for the question, the random question.
I'm scared.
Everybody's scared of the random questions. I guess if I were in that spot, but I just get to ask them. So that's nice. I'm sure my time will come. All right, so let's see here. Your question. Here we go. This could be a good one.
Oh boy.
You have $100,000.
Ooh-wee.
Starting off good, right?
All right, I like it.
You have to donate or create a charity. What do you do?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, this is the first thing that's coming to my mind because it's the most immediate sort of need that I can think of. We were just talking this morning as a staff about how our governor here in Virginia has said that we're going to be one of the main spots where refugees from Afghanistan are going to be flying into. Yeah. And so I think if that kind of money were at our disposal, it would be really great to partner with an organization or somehow be able to put that money to use in ministering to those families who are coming over from Afghanistan.
I love it. No, that's a great use for sure. And another prayer point for all of us.
Yes,
May we just
definitely.
lift up for Afghanistan and especially some of our brothers and sisters over there. So, well, Ashley, thank you so much again for being part of the Alongside podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It has been a joy to have you on, and maybe in the future we'll have you. I'd love to have the even executive team. I think that would be a lot of
that
fun
would be great.
and could be quite interesting for sure. Well, this has been another episode of the Alongside podcast. For more details on Alongside, including show notes, past episodes, and more, you can visit alongsidepodcast.com. I'm your host, Mike Crump. Thanks for listening, And we hope that you'll join us next time as we continue to come alongside other followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church.